terms of the number of Tier 1 institutions that it has. I know a lot of you have seen this night shot of NASA from space. We were actually hosting a group yesterday from Tamaulipas in Mexico, and they were quite impressed with this shot. That, of course, is Dallas-Fort Worth there up at the top, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, and the Eagle Ford Shale. There's so much activity going on there that you can literally see it from space. Our study this year has made one slight alteration. We had been looking at 14 producing counties and 6 adjacent counties. We added Lavaca County this year to the scope of the study. So we're now looking at 21 counties overall. This is sort of a picture of the area that we're studying. The counties in green are the producing counties, the adjacent counties are the ones in orange, and the ones in blue are the counties that you'll see associated often with Eagle Ford Shale, but so far have not been included in the scope of our study. We've done, as has been mentioned previously, a few of these studies before. This is actually our 4th, and hopefully the sequence will keep on coming. We did see significant increases over last year's numbers, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But some of the reasons for that have to do with the fact that the Eagle Ford Shale continues to exceed our expectations. We continue to see lots of new manufacturing, port, shipping, other pipeline projects occurring throughout South Texas and really all along the Gulf Coast. And we've tried to highlight some of those in the report. This is pulled from the report. There's far more information, obviously, than I can go over today, but I just want to kind of give you a sample of how we've sort of highlighted some of the information about some of the new projects underway on the report. As has been mentioned already, about 4,400 permits were issued last year, resulting in about 3,300 completed wells. The numbers we have from the website go through July, show about 3,000 permits, but as has been mentioned, apparently we may be looking at 5,000 permits to be issued in Eagle Ford Shale this year. About 4 billion cubic feet of natural gas being produced every day in the Eagle Ford, and between oil and condensate production, as of June, the Eagle Ford is producing about 1.2 million barrels per day. There's a condensate production. And so while Texas has traditionally led the rest of the country in terms of oil production, it's not even close anymore. What's interesting about this chart is that it's actually now a little bit out of date. Because of the production in North Dakota, they're the 2nd largest oil producer. Alaska actually has fallen to 4th place in terms of oil production in the U.S., which is sort of an interesting development. Texas is producing more oil than it has in 30 years. There are 3 fields now producing 1 million barrels of oil per day: the Permian Basin, the Bakken, and the Eagle Ford. Lots of pipeline construction activity, and one of the reasons I still like to show this slide is just to kind of highlight the fact that there's so much light crude being produced now in the U.S. as a result of shale oil and gas that we are in the process of overwhelming the refining capacity along the Gulf Coast, partly because there's so much oil, and partly because a lot of the refineries along the Gulf Coast were actually optimized for the heavier crude that we expected to get from either OPEC countries or from Canada. So again, just some interesting developments that were unexpected and really couldn't have been predicted even just a few years ago. As Senator Uresti mentioned, we are producing more oil than we import as a country, and the imports from OPEC continue to decline steadily, as you can see from this chart, and we expect that to continue for the foreseeable future just because of all the domestic production here in the U.S. There are lots of shale oil and gas opportunities throughout the world. Right now, the United States is the only place that production of any significance is occurring, although Mexico is very interested in developing their shale oil and gas, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. I know a lot of folks in Mexico have seen this satellite night shot and have wondered why nothing's going on south of the border. And as Commissioner Porter mentioned, the regulatory structure does matter. There, by all accounts, there appear to be several shale formations in Mexico that can be tapped, and yet you can see from this map here that there's really nothing going on all the way down on the coast. There's virtually no shale development occurring in northern Mexico. We are in the process of undertaking a study on Mexico. We want to try and understand what the impacts are going to be south of the Rio Grande as a a result of rulemaking processes, infrastructure issues, better understand those, what security implications may be, what workforce will they need, what role will Pemex play in the new reformed environment. Here's where I'm going to start skipping over a few slides. We'll look at probably 5 states in Mexico, and in addition to an economic impact, try to better understand the legal and regulatory infrastructure, develop a business roadmap for private firms that want to operate in Mexico, and put together a business-to-business platform as well to help companies operate there. So, on to the economic impacts. For the 15-county area under study, it used to be 14, now it's 15, we estimated that in 2013 there was $71 billion in economic output, and that was up from an estimate of $46 billion in 2012 and $20 billion in 2011. 114,000 full-time jobs supported, up from 86,000 in 2012. Sorry about that, that's a typo. 2012 and 38,000 in 2011. Looking ahead, by 2023, we expect in just the 15-county area about $106 billion in economic impact, supporting over 150,000 full-time jobs. For the larger 21-county area, we estimated that last year there was $87 billion in economic output. That's up from $61 billion in 2012 and $25 billion in 2011. Last year, 154,000 full-time jobs were supported, up from an estimate of 116,000 in 2012 and under 50,000 in 2011. If we look out to 2021, we now think that the economic impact of Eagle Ford Shale is going to be $137 billion by that time, supporting nearly 200,000 full-time jobs. So again, the Eagle Ford Shale, because of the new projects that are going in place, and just because of the fact that it continues to surprise us to the upside, causes us to have to reassess our numbers and revise them upwards. This is just an example of this year. We haven't done this for a couple of years, but we actually put together the county-level economic impact and breakdown by county for both the adjacent counties and the producing counties. And this is the table from the report. These are an example of how the tax revenues have increased, and it's clearly a significant amount of money that the counties are bringing in, the ones that do collect sales taxes. And I'm going to speak to that point here in a little more detail in a minute. Cost curves for operating in Eagle Ford continue to come down. One of the things we will be looking at in Mexico is the prospects for that as well. Initially, when companies do start to operate in Mexico, we expect the costs per well to be relatively high. But in order for energy reform to succeed long term, they're going to have to see these sorts of learning curves or cost curve reductions in terms of per well completions in Mexico. Lots of rail impact in the Eagle Ford, and I've talked about this slide before, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Texas obviously has a huge, hugely significant pipeline infrastructure which facilitates all of this oil and gas production, and we're building out the pipelines to the new wells in the Eagle Ford and using this infrastructure to get things to market. Now, I probably have a few predictions left, and I wanted to highlight, just kind of show this slide of a prediction made by the former CEO of Microsoft, Steve Ballmer, who in 2007 said there's no chance the iPhone is going to gain any market share, no chance whatsoever. So I caveat any forecasts I make with the fact that if I try to do one, it couldn't possibly be worse than this one. So this is our forecast for the natural gas production in the Eagle Ford. And as you can see, it's going to rise gradually, but not in a significant way, just because we don't really see natural gas prices moving too far outside roughly the $4 to $7 range for the foreseeable future. And so that's going to cause natural gas production to be somewhat muted. Good news for that, regarding that, though, is that's one of the reasons the U.S. continues to attract lots of new manufacturing processes, because we have affordable supplies of natural gas that are expected to remain affordable for many years to come. With regard to our oil and condensate production forecast, this is how we've mapped it out in the Eagle Ford. It's sort of the moderate case production, showing about almost 600,000 barrels a year of by 2023. Now, I wanted to kind of highlight some things I've been doing sort of on my own, just to look at other scenarios for what production might do in the Eagle Ford. And the starting point for that is our initial report, the very preliminary report that we put out back in 2011, which showed very, very gradual production and ultimately, reaching maybe less than 500,000 barrels of oil production per day. And then by employing a different model, we actually got a model that showed us by 2020, Eagle Ford might be producing 1.3 million barrels per day roughly, and apparently in August we already surpassed that. So revisiting these models, this was the data from this past year, and using a different model, assuming 7.5 million barrels of recoverable oil condensate in the Eagle Ford. We got a model that suggested that by 2020, Eagle Ford could be producing 2 million barrels per day, which is what this curve indicates. Wood Mackenzie out of Houston came up with the same prediction, and they've been working completely independently of us. So it's kind of reassuring to see that. The interesting thing about this forecast, though, so like I said, this was the forecast. This is what the actual data is doing. So it continues to kind of outstrip. It's producing faster and in larger quantities than even this forecast indicates. So using the new data, I tried to refit a curve to the activity in the Eagle Ford. And what's interesting about this is that it suggests the possibility that by 2020, Eagle Ford could actually be producing over 2.6 million barrels of oil per day. If that does turn out to be the case, that means on an annual basis, the Eagle Ford Shale might produce in 1 year almost 1 billion barrels of oil. So we'll see how that goes, but some very interesting potential developments yet to come with the Eagle Ford. These are some slides, again, that I think a lot of you have seen, but it speaks to the issue of community sustainability, what communities should be doing to capitalize on the opportunities here, and I'm not going to belabor these. I do want to point out the issues a lot of rural communities are facing in Texas, and that's the fact that their legislative representation has been diminishing over time. Texas used to be a rural state, and the population was relatively evenly distributed throughout the state, generally speaking, as can be evidenced by this pie chart back from 1890. You can see that there's not a huge difference between a lot of the counties, even counties now that, like Barrett County and Travis County, that have much larger populations. If you fast forward to 2010, you can see that most of the population growth, relatively speaking, has occurred in the larger cities. And with that has gone state Senate seats and state House seats. And so the communities in South and West Texas are relatively poorly representative relative to the large cities, Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio. In fact, I heard an interesting comment by the mayor of Abilene who said that there are more state legislators in Harris County with Houston than there are in all of West Texas. So these dynamics are important to the communities in South and West Texas, and will plague the issues such as where severance taxes go and other benefits from the Eagle Ford Shale. Some of the critical needs that need to be addressed, and I've talked about these before, but I wanted to point out a couple of things specifically. The revenue and investment strategies, it's interesting to note there are several counties in the Eagle Ford Shale area that are not collecting, cities and counties that aren't collecting up to the 2% sales tax that they're allowed to collect, that could be used to develop public amenities, improve quality of life, put in infrastructure. There are also some interesting options with regard to old laws on the books that a lot of counties aren't always taking advantage of. They're allowed to collect 15 cents per $100 for a county bridge road account that dates back to 1883, the law allowing counties to do that. And also property tax monies that can be set aside for flood control projects. As of now, there is no systematic allocation of severance tax revenue from the producing areas. All that money goes right up to Austin, and it's up to the legislature to decide what to do with that money. Unlike North Dakota, for example, which has a legacy fund, and it's actually specifically allocates some of the money collected from the oil and gas severance taxes back to the affected counties. Norway has a similar sort of a trust fund program. So rather than, again, in a lot of cases I've talked in generalities about revenue and investment strategies, I thought I would throw up some specific items that communities could look at as possible more systematic solutions to address that issue of community sustainability. And then these are just some of the examples of the infrastructure that communities should be putting in place that will support diversification of industry and opportunities to really ensure their sustainability over the next 50 to 100 years. And in this report, we have highlighted a few cities that we found are doing a particularly good job of managing through some of the really tough issues associated with the Eagle Ford. And you'll hear from them here in just a few minutes. Alan Barnes is the city manager of Gonzales, where the Texas Revolution started. Don Timrak is here from Karnes City, a hotbed of activity in the Eagle Ford. Bruce Pearson from Pleasanton, and Larry Dovalina from Petula. So, again, you'll be hearing from the city managers, and Omar Garcia with Steer is going to ask them a few questions about the secrets to their success, but some really good stories here to be told. And then the diversification that I mentioned, highlight that in the report also. We talk about the fact that South Texas is apparently a really good environment for growing olive trees, which can produce olive oil. Since the U.S. imports about 95% of the olive oil it consumes, it's a tremendously good business opportunity. And then wildlife photography, too, has a lot of potential in South Texas. It's just a couple of examples of opportunities for communities to diversify themselves. And so the other Yogi Berra quote I wanted to use was, "The future ain't what it used to be." And so, just in closing, because of the fact that I think a lot of us never thought we'd see the kind of oil and gas production that we're seeing now, I haven't seen since the late 70s or early 80s, I wanted to kind of highlight this map of the United States I found at the Oasis in Austin, which I really liked a lot. It puts Texas in the proper perspective. And to sort of celebrate that, I have a few slides for some fun to really kind of celebrate the fact that we are in Texas. And the first one is near and dear to our hearts here in San Antonio. Only Texas can turn defeat into a legend, and a song, and a tourist attraction, and a major motion picture. And then from San Houston, Texas is the finest portion of the globe that's ever blessed my vision. And then finally, when it comes down to it, there's really only two states in America, Texas and not Texas. So with that, I thank you.